I read books this year, 60 of them, and this video is me explaining to you my top 10. Really, it's my top 12, but, that's not as catchy as top 10 books I read in 2022. I read quite a few books this year, but that was mainly due to the fact that I'm an English major and it's required for my degree, but I will say I did find some very good books to spend my time with throughout the year. I know this video is a little late to the beginning of the new year, but what can I say? I was tired. I didn't want to do it, but here we go. The first runner-up is Beloved by Toni Morrison. Now, it's a runner-up just because I've read it before and I wanted to put books I've never read before in my top 10, but Beloved is absolutely always going to be a 5-star every single time I read it. I know most people have heard about Beloved, but if you've never heard of it before, it's basically about this woman who escapes slavery and in the process has to get rid of some of her children and the repercussions of that affect her whole family. I think it's a really interesting topic and it's handled really well. Please read it. The second runner-up is A Generous Spirit by Beth Brandt. This is a collection of short stories and essays that talk about Indigenous life, whether it is completely scientific or personal, like the essays, or it uses short stories, works of fiction, as ways to describe this life. It's super interesting, but it just barely didn't reach the top 10 compared to the other books I read this year, but I really highly recommend it. Now we finally reach number 10 of our top 10, which is volume 11 of Ouran High School Host Club. I only read one Ouran volume this year, so it had to make the cut because Ouran has a very special nostalgic place in my heart. This volume particularly is one that is not drawn in the anime, so it was really refreshing to see the characters in a situation I'd never seen them in before, and I just love them a whole lot. I love the art, and I love the author's little notes on the side when she talks about what she's been reading or eating while she makes the manga. I would really encourage you to give this one a read as well. Number 9 is Gem and the Holograms Volume 2. To be honest, I have no idea why number 1 isn't on this list, but maybe I didn't read it this year? I couldn't tell you. But Gem and the Holograms, the comic book version, is actually a more modern take on the original Gem and the Holograms that was sort of taking place in the 80s. I think this one is really cute. If you go into it expecting the TV show, you're definitely going to be a little bit disappointed, but I think if you take it for what it is, as trying to bring Gem and the Holograms to a more modern young audience, I think you'll realize how good it is and how interesting the story is. Plus, the art in it is just beautiful. I love looking at all the different pages that are just different pieces of art. It's absolutely phenomenal. I would reread it over and over again. Please give it a read yourself. Number 8 is Fruits Basket Volume 4. This is obviously the omnibus version. It's a lot bigger than a regular manga. I know I've done a lot of manga and comic books for my top 10, but they just are good this year. What can I say? Everything I've read has been 5 stars. If you don't know what Fruits Basket is, it follows this girl, Toru Honda, who ends up involved with this family where if you hug the person of an opposite gender or touch the person of an opposite gender, they turn into their animal of the zodiac. It's a really sweet story, and Toru is just such a sweet character. I love her so much. She gives me such motivation to be kinder, and I really enjoy the way she handles different situations in these stories. Plus, the art is just really good. I think it's a little bit more retro than others, but I would definitely give it a chance. Book number 7 is How Much of These Hills is Gold. If I had to use a few words to describe this book, I would say dust, dirt, and family. It's historical fiction. It takes place sort of in a past America, and it follows a family whose father has just passed away, and it leaves these 2 siblings left to fend for themselves when they're very young, and how they deal with that in sort of a Dust Bowl era, and how they can relate to other people even when they look quote-unquote not American, which is to say they are not white children, and how this affects how they deal with everything. I think it's super interesting, and it's a great discussion on family and how important family is to you when it may change what you want to do with your life. Please read this book. Number 6 is How to Be Perfect. This is a nonfiction philosophy book. on being the best you can possibly be. So it basically takes different roots of philosophy and explains how you can be the best person you can by taking a little bit from each and not just simply going with one version of philosophy. It's written by the guy who wrote The Good Place, Mike Schur, and the audiobook has characters and actors from The Good Place read certain sections, and I think it is such a fun read. It doesn't bog you down with the information. It's really lighthearted and super important, I think. It gives you a lot of peace about how you can be the best you can be without freaking out over having to be super correct all the time. Number 5 is Princess Jellyfish. I don't really know how to explain the plot of this book other than there's a girl who loves jellyfish and is a beautiful artist and meets a girl who is beautiful and dresses very fashionably, and they end up getting really close and working together to make some really pretty designs. That's not really the plot, but it's the part that I really enjoy. This book was amazing. I love the art. They all look so cute and fun, and you just want to keep reading. Even if it starts to get a little bit kooky, the main character ends up living in a house for girls who sort of don't interact with the outside world the same way. They're not like other girls, but not in an annoying way, in a very cute and endearing way. And so I would really recommend this book if you ever feel sort of out of place. If you were that kid in middle school who wore anime shirts and not many people talk to you, I'm definitely calling out myself here. I think you'll like this book. Number 4 is Bad Indians, a tribal memoir. It's a conversation about Native family history and schooling erasure of Native life and Native history. It's kind of fiction, but mostly nonfiction. She learns the stories of her relatives and her ancestors, as well as talking about her own life and her own interactions as an Indigenous person in today's world. One that really sticks out to me is a little girl doing a project about Native Americans who runs into her and she says, "Well, that's what I am." And the little girl just looks shocked, like she can't believe that Native Americans and Indigenous people are still alive, which I think is really telling about the way we teach children about Indigenous people and what Americans, quote unquote Americans, have done to them. So I would really encourage you to read this. I think this is information that everybody needs to hear and is also a really enjoyable read. Number 3 is Who's a Good Boy, which is a collection of the episodes of a podcast, Welcome to Night Vale. This is their 4th installment, I'm pretty sure, and I have all the ones before this. And it's just really enjoyable to see a podcast written down. I mean, I can hear the voices of the characters in my head, but it's really interesting. Plus, they pair it with some amazing artwork, and I just absolutely love it. Night Vale is such a comfort, and I can't wait for the next volume of this book series to come out, because listening to the new episodes, it's just so interesting to read them and pick up on information that you kind of don't always recognize is important, or just something crazy that they say that you didn't see before because you were so focused on some other aspect of the audio. I would definitely recommend these books, but I would also recommend the Night Vale podcast. Number 2 is The Hunger Games. I absolutely love this book, and I love this book series. I read it first when I was like in 6th grade, and I still keep coming back to it because I enjoy it so much. You can definitely see the wear and tear on this novel because I've had it for years, but I really think the story is very poignant. I think it's very topical, and I think some people who haven't read it should read it and maybe learn a lesson from it. That being said, I think it's really interesting. I think the visuals that she describes are really cool and really detailed, and also I just really love Peeta. I've loved him since the 6th grade, and I will continue to love him. So, I love this book, and that's why it's number 2. Please give this book a chance if you never have, or if you have, go reread it and see what you missed. My number 1 book of 2022 is Anxious People by Fredrik Backman. I have read this book and seen the limited series that was on Netflix lots of times, definitely more than once, I love the discussion of life and death and relationships people form with the world around them. It's an absolutely wonderful read, but it's also quite funny. Most of the lines I went back through and underlined are either really poignant and something you should remember forever, or just really entertaining and something that made me almost laugh out loud. And books really don't make me laugh out loud. This book hit me in a time where I needed it most, and so rereading it, it really just, it makes me feel good, and you want to read books that make you feel good, but it also teaches you something. It shows you yourself in ways that you maybe didn't realize before, and that's why I love this book. I really, really, truly recommend this book to everyone. Moms, dads, kids, everybody. So that is my 5-star books that I read in 2022. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you got a new book recommendation out of this that hopefully you'll read. And I'll see you next time. Bye!